approval of the agenda. Does anyone want to move approval of the agenda?
Move to approve the agenda.
I second.
Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Okay, great. Comments from the chair. I do not have any comments tonight. Okay, general business. Any comments from the public?
Yeah, I raised a public record, an open meeting violation after getting locked down.
You have to use
Can't hear me?
the microphone.
I sent a open meeting violation to your attention and got no response. The law requires the council, the planning commission to meet and address it, or failing to do so would be a denial that it happened, but that's not really plausible. So I'm just concerned that we're flying in the face of the law yet again. But you can't hold meetings in this. That's actually the third meeting that happened where people were locked out.
Which meeting were you not able to attend?
I attended and left and could not get back in the meeting, your last meeting on the 31st. Front and rear doors were locked. But the fact that I wrote it all up and sent it to the chair and apparently it's not been addressed is troubling.
Okay, I'm sorry. I get a lot of email and I didn't.
You can just forward that along to us. We can.
Okay. Must have gotten buried in
Well,
my
I did
email.
a records request today of where the records that says y'all are dealing with it.
Well, you're
And-
not going to see it because we didn't get it.
But
so-
apparently Miller told the lame police officer that the records don't exist, rather than ask you for it. That's an example of how y'all are being played and not doing your job, so.
I've never heard of this issue. I had no idea, Steve, that you weren't able to get back.
And the same thing happened in Complete Streets, and then Thomas Weiss was locked out over at the senior center of the city council meeting last week. And he came in and said, y'all need to start over, It's hard to argue you followed the law with a public participation process on a city plant when you can't keep the doors unlocked. And it's true that it's a staff person's responsibility other than you to keep track of who's meeting when and make sure the doors aren't locked during those hours. But the violation was by this body, not.
Well, we'll look into it once we get the information
Well,
from Ariane. So.
Looking into it after it was filed on the 31st, and I believe the law requires the council commission to meet within 10 days to address it.
As we said,
The clock doesn't start over because you lost an email. So I would think you might want to amend your agenda and deal with it.
it wasn't a lost agenda item. It wasn't a lost email.
So you were aware of it?
No, we weren't. Nobody was aware.
I looked in my email. I didn't realize that you only sent it to me and I had to
Well,
deal
you're the
with
chair.
it.
That's who it has to go to.
Okay, I apologize. I get, like I said, I get a lot of email and I'm not always on top of it.
Right, but that's not an exemption from the law.
Okay,
Mike was
all right.
aware of it today, and he didn't call it to y'all's attention to get it on the agenda today.
I was not made aware of it today.
You
I
weren't?
replied back to and asked, I was like, I am not aware of any open meeting violations that have been made. And I went down and talked to Bill and asked him if he was aware of any. And he said he was not aware of any requests that had been made either. So I answered to the best of my information, which was there was
This is the way
nothing.
you staff the planning commission. You don't ask the chair if she got a notice of violation.
I did not ask if she had a
Well, then you
notice of
failed in
violation.
your job,
I did not fail in my job.
because I'll look up the law if you need it, but is Aaron online?
We'll,
I
as
believe
we
it's-
said, we'll take this up. We've got folks who
But
can
if
look
you're
into
made
this
aware that the
tomorrow.
law requires you to meet in 10 days, you should be dealing with it tonight, not.
And is it on the agenda, Steve? Because you'll be the first one to point out it's not on the agenda and therefore we can't do anything about it. Correct?
I won't-
Correct?
You should have addressed it before you should have raised it before they amended the agenda or approved the agenda.
You could also very easily have forwarded that on to folks who you know actually work
My
on
only
it.
obligation was to send it to the chair. And when you became aware of it today, your obligation
I did
was
not
to-
become aware of it today.
Then how did you tell
I
Officer Sorrells that no such record exists?
said there's no such record because I have not been made aware of any of any open meetings
Well,
violations.
you can't certify that something doesn't exist because you're not aware of it.
As I said, we will
That's a
take
false
this up.
certification.
We will take this up tomorrow when
You're not calling the shots here. It's their body. And the body here, the chair has the notice. She's aware of it.
It's
She
not-
may want to take
Yeah, it
an
seems-
executive
I don't know-
session.
I don't know anything about the timeline. It seems like there needs to be some legal review. I mean, we can't answer, we don't know the answer to that. It was in
I'll
an
point
email
you
that
to
you
the
didn't see.
statute that says you have
We
to
weren't made
address
aware
it
of
within
it,
10 days.
right? And so what do we need to do next? I mean, I would think that's a city attorney opinion.
Yeah, I'm not, I don't know if Aaron has any helpful thoughts, but I'm sorry, I missed it.
But we will take a look and see what the city attorney wants or believes is the appropriate action to take at this point.
Yeah.
That we forward these on to make sure that we get the correct legal opinions.
Okay,
So,
that sounds good, and maybe we could address it in 2 weeks, or put it on the agenda for next
You're
time.
missing the point that the law requires you to address it within 10 days of the notice. You
Steve,
can't
I'm
just
not sure
ignore
what
that.
you want us to do here. Nobody in this room is gonna be able to say, okay, so the door got locked. Nobody can address it tonight in a constructive way. I think everybody in this room wants to make sure that the public can attend these meetings. And the best thing to do is to address this comprehensively. City attorney, whoever, like building maintenance, whoever is in charge of the doors.
You're right, it is not only your problem. The complete streets and the city council in 3 different locations had the same problem, so.
You know, obviously when we all entered the building at the beginning of the meeting, the doors are unlocked. And so,
They're
If the-
electric locks and they run
Okay.
a timer.
all right, so that's something that nobody in this room has control over, but we need to address.
I will let it lie for now, but I've made you aware of what the law is.
Thanks for making us aware.
Okay, is there any other general business? Okay, shall we move on to the city plan?
all right, so if anyone wants a couple hard copies, I do have 2 of them. So if anyone would like a copy to bring home or a copy to have now, you're welcome to. So the website is up to date with all of the changes that were approved last week. So we have that. We reviewed all of those comments and incorporated all of those comments into both the storyboards and the implementation plans, and we have rebuilt the archive version as was requested to be in a readable PDF version. It has a table of contents. If you're in the actual version, you can link through them. It is searchable. So that is there. I don't know how much detail or what questions you guys want to go through, if you have any, on what changes were made of what we had gone through in the matrix. We can do this in a couple of ways. It's really up to you guys if you want to go through the specific details or if you guys want to ask questions or how you guys want to handle it. But that's the big overview is all those changes that were approved, we went through. Let me just go.
You put dramatic. You used the dramatic.
I did put it, you told me, you said say dramatic, so I did put dramatic. I didn't put it in the title, but I
Nope.
did put it in the text,
I like
so. No, you tell me what to do, and that's my job. So yeah, a lot of the sections, those were deleted. That was, the housing goal was increased. The typos and corrections. The only thing I will say about the archive version is the final archive version was wrapped up today. So we did a lot of the stuff, got it done for Friday, and then did proofreading of everything over the weekend and made those changes this morning. What hasn't been done is a side-by-side on but they were drafted from one creating the other. But that being said, I still, between now and the council meeting, I want to say that there wasn't, over the weekend, a couple of the proofreading changes, make sure the proofreading changes made it to both versions. I'm confident right now it's all in there, but I always say that, and then, if there's one, then it bothers me. And so I want to make sure that's all correct, but all those little things can get updated when we get to council. So let's see, all the Kate changes. Adding in the RPC language, statistics, a couple more links. So I went through and tested everything. Oh, I do want to go through and talk a little bit about, and I could also, we'll go with, let me open, locked out of Zoom again. Got to get him to raise his hand.
Are we paused on edits then until it gets to the city council?
Are we paused? Planning Commission, yes. Once you forward this on, so if you were to forward this on today,
Yeah.
it's out of your hands. You're more than welcome to make additional recommendations to council, and
Right.
if they make any substantive comments, which is most of the big comments, so if they're not making technical changes, it has to come back to you for input in your opinion.
Great.
So it will come back. You can't veto it, but you can go through and say, no, I think that's a bad idea, or that doesn't reflect the interests of the Planning Commission.
Yeah. Great.
Maria. That is the real Maria this time. Hello, Maria.
Hi. Mike, I had a question of whether your group had a chance to look at the URL issue, if there's a way to make it cleaner, shorter.
Yes, thank you for bringing that up. We did, so we reached out and talked to Esri, and we talked to SE Group, and they're like, yeah, that's easy, we can do that. And then we said, oh, sure, okay, help us out, tell us what we have to do to get that changed. And they came back about 24 hours later and said, it's gonna be harder, but it is possible. So what we're looking at over the next 30 days is to go through and basically build a mirror version, and Nick is going to continue to work on that to go through and say, okay, it is possible. It's going to take some time once the shift goes. We're not giving up on it because they do say it's possible, and they did say it's possible. But everyone we're working with are folks who haven't actually done it. They're just like, yeah, we know it's possible, but I haven't done it. So we're trying to find somebody who has the experience that can walk us through. So yes, thank you for pointing that out. And I'm just gonna, if everyone's okay with this real quick. I just want to. All right, I'm just going to share my screen really quick because I did want to show. And there we go. All right, so What I did want to show, so the plan chapter remains the same. We've got the updated input here. So that's all good. The plan chapters look a little different. You'll notice it has story map and implementation plan. We took out the PDF because the PDF is in the archive, and every time there is an iteration, they all have to remain identical. So by making a storyboard, a PDF of a storyboard, a collection of PDFs of storyboards, and then the archive, you have 4 opportunities to make a mistake. So we took that piece out. If somebody would like the PDF, it's in the archive. And we think people would probably do that anyways, just because it's where things are set up. So we did remove that piece. So we have the story map and the implementation plan. All of this remains the same. At the bottom, we did have this asked all information contained in these plans and implementation strategies are only as accurate as the adoption date of this plan. Any changes will be incorporated in future amendments to the plan. So we do have the qualifier in there. So I want to open this, just any of the story maps here. And what has changed Nick is he's really good at what he does. And so I'm really happy he's working for us right now. So one of the things, we'll just turn on wetlands for now. So as you remember, we've got the ability to zoom in and zoom out. But if you zoom in, parcel lines turn on. So it's not there when you're out, but it's there as you zoom in. So we've got a couple of these features that turn on as you zoom in and get more resolution. So that's a new change. We think that's a good change, and people had commented that they wanted to see that more information in there. Obviously, we've got the legend can be opened and shut, zooming in, zooming out, home. But we also added in this guy, a search function. So I will type in 39 Main, and we've got 39 Main Street, Montpelier. So that's City Hall, and it zooms you into City Hall. So you actually can put in your address, whatever address you want, and then click on that address, and it will take you to that site. So if somebody happens to be like, I want to find my house, you can put in your address. As long as you put it in number, then street. So you've got to kind of put it in the correct order, and then it'll pop up with some recommendations. So that's the way that works. I wanted to just let folks know that some of the functionality has changed a little bit for the better. So I think people will be happy with this. You're able to search your own properties. You're able to zoom in, zoom out, and I think the information is easier to get to. So, anyone have any questions on that?
Where do we see the land use map? Because that was one of the things we were going with basically all of our 9.
All right, let me get this guy out of my way so I can get back.
Is that
to
just
the
what we
plan
call
chapters.
the future land use?
Future land use map? Yeah.
Okay.
So that would be up under land use. So we go to story map. And as we said, we've got all the information. Bringing everything together. Current land use, future land use. So.
Okay, so where is the key to that so somebody would know what's being proposed?
So the key is the legend over here on the left.
Okay.
You click on that. So the dark purple is your downtown center.
Okay.
Light
Okay.
planned growth area.
Thank you.
Yep. And I'll double check the video and see if it has that. If it doesn't, I'll make sure that we edit in a note on that for the council. Let them know that we'll have to edit in a note that's where you can find the legend. But I'm pretty sure we talk about it. And if anyone is curious, this is where we're at with the final future land use map. And again, as I mentioned, if you zoom in once, one more, there we go. Then you start to get the parcel lines. And again, somebody can go through. If they're curious, they can't find out where they are, where their property is, they can click on this button here and you can enter your property address and it will take you there. So those are a couple of the bigger changes that I thought were pretty good that Nick in his work, he was, we had people ask for more information in each of these. So he was able to go through and add in a few more features that kind of help answer some of those questions. So I thought he did a great job. We did add in the proposed TIF district as one. It's not a required thing, but we know we're going to be proposing it for these 4 properties. We might as well put it in the land use plan. So.
Can I ask a question about, I'm just looking at some of the changes. So
Nope, go ahead.
using a lobbyist to support changes to state laws, that whole thing is a new goal, right?
Yes. Yep.
That's-
There was a request to
Yep.
have a lobbyist. I put a couple of things into that. There was some pieces from. Unfortunately, I keep getting my controls buried. Then under housing.
Yes. Yeah.
So yes. So yeah, there were a couple of things that came in not only from yours. The lobbyist. There it is. I'm just going to shrink this guy up a little bit. So, and also the housing committee had talked about it. So we tried to capture a bunch of things. Work with the state to sell underutilized state buildings and parking lots to enable housing development. 2, use a lobbyist to change state law on appeals to eliminate the any 20 persons provision and to limit appeal rights to stop frivolous appeals. 3, ask the state to institute a statewide vacancy tax. That is from the housing committee. Remember, the housing committee dropped their thing at the last second. That was one of their requests. So I said I would insert as many of their requests as I could that fit into things we have, but I wasn't going to reformat the plan to meet their expectations. So that was one they had requested, and to request a charter change to allow the city to institute a vacancy tax. That was a request they had. Increase funding to the state sprinkler fund. That was one they had requested, and create a revolving loan fund for low or no interest loans for new housing projects. I think that was one that, his name escapes me right now. It was requested by somebody in the public hearing. So.
Oh, it all looked good. It was just a new goal. I was just.
Yep, there were a couple of new goals. That was one of them. Trying to see if any others jump out at me. Yep, the dramatic changes is there on that one. And yes, up at the top of that one in the goals, there's to increase the number of homes in Montpelier by a minimum of 75 units per year is in the housing implementation plan. And in the land use implementation plan, if anyone wants to, number 2 in the goals here, ensure sufficient land is available for future economic opportunities and to grow housing by 1,500 units in the next 20 years. So because that was the way that was worded, I had to reword it, and I went with the 1,500 units rather than another statement of the 75 units per year, because land use is generally a little bit longer looking. Bigger.
I'm sorry, where did that land? Where did you insert that?
It's number 2, goal number 2.
Goal number 2, okay.
Yep. So before, I think it had said ensure sufficient land is available for housing and economic opportunities.
Okay.
So that one was altered.
And I saw the child care goal too.
Yep, the child care goal is in there. There had been a comment from folks on about the green print. Remember, there was a comment that it was there, so we added in to the bottom of the one here, update the green print and continue its implementation. In the spirit of volunteerism, voluntary land conservation actions will be determined by the landowner's willingness to participate in the identified conservation initiatives. That was requested by folks who owned land who had some of these in there. So we did add that, as we said. what was approved. We've inserted the language into these various pieces.
That was a lot of work. Thank you.
If you guys all set, I can stop sharing or.
Yeah, does anyone have any questions or want Mike to go over anything specific, or do we feel ready to, oh, I guess, yeah, and then I guess we see if there's any comments from the public, but there's no questions.
No, that
Oh.
was helpful to go through those changes, so. No questions for me.
Okay, are there any comments from the public? Okay,
So there are two items. One would be voting to forward the city plan to the council for their consideration. That would be one motion. And then the next one would be just to, the required report did have some minor changes. I did send you an updated version. It was really small. It had to do with the fact that the future land use map names had changed from the original. At the time we had first warned this, we had used the future land use as we had understood it to be, and then the state updated their procedures, and so we updated the future land use map, if you remember us doing that, and it changed some of the names. So as a part of the required report that we're not required to do, we, it asks you to talk about changes of land use designations in the future land use map, so that's what we did. We just updated that to the new future land use.
okay, so we have to separately approve the report and the.
Yeah, you
okay,
just do that as a separate item.
Okay.
Well, I move to forward the city plan to the city council with the changes made by the planning department after the public hearings and our discussion last meeting.
I will second that motion.
Okay, all those in favor?
I
Okay,
Oh,
great.
we got Maria.
So what date will the city council start discussing this? May 14th, is that?
This gives the opportunity for them to have their first hearing on May 14th.
Okay, but
So they
they'll
have to have two,
determine it.
May
Okay.
14th and 28th. I'll be meeting with the council next week, and I'll be asking them if they want me to warn their meeting, their hearings for the 14th and 28th.
Okay. Okay, so then we need to remove
Approval of the required report.
approval of the report. Did anyone have any questions on the report or comments before?
Yeah, I'm kind of looking at it now. It's a pretty big document. Is it that bulleted list where it talks about downtown, planned growth area, transition/infill, enterprise, rural general, rural agricultural and forestry, and rural conservation? And that is where that terminology was updated to
Yes.
conform with the new terminology from the state?
Yes.
Okay.
Yep.
I move that we forward the report as well.
I second that.
Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Okay, great. All right, well, why don't we, actually, if we can just consider the minutes first, and maybe we can discuss upcoming agenda items.
One thing that I had noticed was that, so for the March 10th minutes, where it says in attendance, Carolyn and Peter Kelman, but then
Yeah.
Also says that Thomas Weiss spoke, so
Oh, yeah.
I assume that he was in attendance in some form.
And
I
we
would say
should-
it's
yeah.
Carolyn Ridpath, I
Right.
believe is the person who's Carolyn.
Oh, yeah, and this is still incorrect about the municipal planning grant that we did vote it through, right, on the March 10th meeting.
Yes.
Yeah,
The vote was taken, and that's why I got this. I could look up my. So I have Aaron making the motion and Sean seconding. And it was unanimous. Motion as edited.
and just on the March 24th meetings, it's Laura LaRosa, just because I happen to know her name, not Laurel. But I don't know if we can just move the minutes with those
Oh.
changes, or if anyone has any other changes.
I'm reading through it right now.
Okay, yeah, or needs more
Yeah,
time.
that's the one that I'm on.
Well, there's a lot that happened.
My comments are not in there about the dispatch, et cetera. Nor am I even recognizing some of that here.
Oh, on the March 31st?
Correct.
Okay.
March 24th, which was the one at the senior.
Oh, okay.
31st, I was here too.
Okay, yeah, I think the 24th, they don't list everyone, but if you need,
Yeah, Jocelyn is Jocelyn Wilczek. I think we got a lot of the names in there though.
Steve did speak at the 24th.
okay.
But they don't list everybody who was there.
Doubling housing, others spoke previous statements. Yeah, it would have been before Ward.
Yeah, I'm not exactly sure, because I don't see, Peter Kelman spoke for a significant amount of time. I don't know how,
Yeah, he didn't make it out.
he didn't make the cut. I don't know how we want to approach the minutes, because they're not really, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I have some notes from that night and have kind of a list of people's names and what was said. So I don't know if the plan is to, in the minutes, to capture everyone that spoke and a summary of what they said or not, but I can maybe fill in some pieces here and now if we want to try to piece together every person that spoke and things that were said, but I'm not sure if that's really what we're trying to accomplish or not in the minutes. But Steve spoke. Where did you go?
If it's helpful, I'll give you the relevant paragraph. Minutes shall be taken of all meetings. The minutes shall cover all topics and motions that arise and give a true indication of the business of the meeting. At a minimum, include the following information: all members of the public body present, all other active participants in the meeting, all motions, proposals, resolutions offered, etc. So if you can't figure out who was at the meeting, you probably should approve them another day.
Yeah, I have your notes that you talked about regional dispatch and unhoused service solutions. Regional dispatch worried not going to make the growth center deadline, lacking a vision and plan in the country club road, needs to be a master plan, it probably needs a new downtown center, create a capital budget, which is a prerequisite for the growth center. That's what I have for you. And you spoke before Peter. And so, again, I don't know if any of that is helpful. But Steve, Steve is before Peter.
Okay, well, I don't know if we want to add that to the 24th, or we want to, yeah. But I don't know if anyone,
We
I
can get
wasn't
some
writing that down.
recommended language and adopt it on the next one. I mean,
Okay.
otherwise I'm trying to write it on the fly and.
Yeah,
Could you send your list
Yeah.
of your
Yeah.
notes? I mean, we should have, it should be in the recorded meeting too, but probably everybody that got up and contributed should be, based on what was just read, right? Everybody that contributed should at least be recognized for the topic that they brought up.
Yeah, looks like most of them were until we got later in the meeting. And then it became another resident, and maybe that was our fault for not prompting
to
people,
identify
asking people to
Yeah.
identify themselves, so.
Yeah, I'll send my notes and just read through the names because I'm not familiar with a lot of the people that spoke. So, yeah, happy to
All right,
give my notes.
then we'll approve these at the next meeting, so.
okay. Do we want to approve the March 10th and the March 31st minutes with the changes of adding Carolyn's last name, adding Tom Weiss, adding the information about the municipal planning grant, and adding Steve as an attendee on March 31st? Just to get to, what?
I think that sounds reasonable.
Okay.
All right, is that a motion from Sean?
Motion for
All right.
that?
Wait, I'm sorry. What can you?
Okay,
I'm sorry. I'm not caught up.
Approving
Okay,
the
so-
10th as amended and approving the 31st as amended.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, nothing to the 20th.
And I have one or two more notes. Sorry,
Oh,
for-
okay. No, no.
For the 31st,
Yeah.
because I was aware of other folks present as well. So Steve was here, I believe Thomas Weiss was here
Oh,
on the
okay.
31st.
Yeah.
Yes, he was.
And
The developer guy was here too.
yeah, Zachary Hunter was here as well.
Oh, okay. Okay.
I might add, if you're paying somebody, a clerk to Tammy, to keep good minutes, it's really on her to go back through the video and make sure they're complete and pull all the names out of the recording, et cetera.
Yeah, I mean, in fairness to her, I don't think Zachary Hunter spoke, so,
He did.
yeah. How would she may not have known from the video.
No, she wouldn't have.
Yeah.
What I spoke about, though, when challenging the fact that Mike Miller asserted that the council's position is such and such, which there's no evidence of, regarding dispatch, and that the statement was made that we're just gonna defer to staff on dispatch. I think those are relevant to the minutes.
Do we want to add that?
Yes, let's add.
Okay, okay.
Let's add that.
Thank you. And Mike, are you getting all these changes, or should we just, we could just approve the minutes at the next meeting too? If,
Or we'd approve the 10th and then go back to the 24th and the 31st.
okay, yeah. Why don't we approve, if someone wants to make a motion to approve the 10th with the,
I have a motion to approve the 10th with That makes sense.
changes previously discussed. Okay. Anyone want to second that?
I'll second that.
Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Okay.
Want to get to the end of the year.
Busy meetings, you know, we'll.
But these meetings have had a lot more comment and been really important, and so we need to just get them right.
Okay, all right, discussion of any upcoming agenda items. Do other folks have upcoming, I know we talked about some zoning stuff, but any other?
I mean, this comment about when the city council moved, I mean, how quickly could we do zoning? Can we do this, can it be going at the same time as we're working on the city plan? Because there are some changes that we could do quickly that would help some people that are trying to get projects done right now.
Yeah, that was going to be my suggestion was, because this would be off our plate, or is off our plate, your plate right now, we can set up to, my thought would be we find out how to set up a public meeting and bring in other developers, other folks, so we can start to pull together as full a picture as we can, so we can start to lay out where the areas we need to address and look at. I think we heard a lot of comments through the public hearing process, but I think there may be other opportunities and other input. I know the DRB members, they work with this every day, and so they might have some recommendations of places where they're like, I don't know why this comes to our plate. Maybe this is something the administrator can handle, those types of comments.
My whole thing is like, so we have somebody that's actively working on projects that tells us he's spending $6,000 a month carrying costs, and if we change 4 words, like he can just move forward with his projects. That, I just know how long it can take some of these other zoning things, and what I don't want to do is, we've got a request from somebody trying to build houses that we want them to build. Can we pick off like really low-hanging fruit and say, look, can we just put that one through like right away? We know we got other, I know it's a little, like, okay, we're amending and we got a bunch of work to do on the back end for the staff, but it seems like a really reasonable, it was 4 words, remember? It's like, just change this, and then it aligns with what the city council approved last year.
Yeah, but even if we change 4 words, then we have. Then it's public. There's still process,
Yeah,
right?
there's still
There are 2 avenues for updating zoning. So you have the full process, which is what we would all be working through, and there's also an abbreviated process for emergency zoning amendments. That's a much shorter, much narrowly defined.
So could they submit, what's the process for that?
Well, I mean, part of that is we want to make sure that we've got the correct bite into it. So we don't go through and recommend making these changes really quickly, which might take 6 weeks, 8 weeks, and then go and say, oh shoot, we should have added those other 2 things in as well while we were doing that. So that's why I was thinking, let's at least take an opportunity to have a meeting, sit down, see if we can pull together things of what would be something that might be on a fast track.
The low-hanging fruit.
The low-hanging fruit, and what are the things that we need to make sure we talk about, because some of these are easy fixes, but they may have big consequences, and we just have to make sure we know that possibility is there before we make the jump. And I've been doing this a while, and I worked with a lot of communities that had no zoning and no regulations, and most of my time talking with them was, how are we going to address the fact that we've got all these problem developers? And I used to talk to them, and the expression I used to use to them was, I said, 90% of the rules are for 10% of the people. 90% of these developers are going to do the right thing every time. We only have these rules in place because they're the 10%. We all know who they are. And those are the people that we have to have rules for, because if you didn't, they would say, well, there's no rule that says I can't do that. And one example of that I used to always explain was the town of Johnson, or the town of Cambridge, now has subdivision regulations because there was a developer out there building subdivisions that you couldn't fit fire trucks into. And once the fire department crashed their brand new fire truck, they said, this is ridiculous. We can't keep doing this. What do we have to do to make sure that developers build roads big enough to fit a fire truck down? Because, I can't believe someone would do that. So they passed subdivision regulations to make sure you build roads that you can fit an ambulance and a fire truck down. But that's why they have it, just because 10% of the people will build a road so narrow, so steep, without turnarounds, that you can't fit a fire truck in. So that's debate. Not that I expect that degree here, but there's a little bit of, there is a line out there where we have to just be a little bit cautious of and conscious of. We also have requirements. We keep talking about, hey, let's do all this so we can get into Tier 1A at the state, so we can get these exemptions. Well, those exemptions exist because we're doing the right thing with our regulations. If we cut back our regulations to a point that they no longer qualify, great, you don't have to go through the local process anymore, but you're now kicked into Act 250. So we just have to make sure we're doing our due diligence and talking
Right,
about
I'm just talking about 4 words, right? And
Yeah.
like little quick things, right? Like we know we've done these it's, for those that are newer, I mean, you get a lot of input with the zoning changes, but some of these things that are easy, could we do in 2 weeks a listening session like Mike is suggesting? Is that enough time to get the word out to developers and other interested parties that could give us their low-hanging fruit?
Maria has her hand up too, so I don't know if she wants to
Sorry,
contribute to
I'm
this
in a different
discussion.
screen and I'm not seeing her. There we go, thank you.
Hi guys, I think piggybacking on what Gabe was just talking about, I would love to have some of these developers into a meeting so that we could also ask them questions. I think before we were having a public hearing and we were listening to what they had to say, I think having a meeting where we could ask our own questions and get a clearer picture of what the roadblocks are, what the costs are, what they're concerned about, to see what edits we can make to the zoning, I think would be necessary if we're really going to try to move something forward based on their public hearing comments.
I think that makes a lot of sense. Mike, can you describe then what the process would look like if we're starting there with folks coming in and talking to us? Then what does the process look like in your opinion? I mean, you from a planning department position will have opinions.
Yep.
But then the planning commission folks will as well.
Yeah, I think if we had a first meeting and we had a lot of public input, maybe you don't have an opportunity to talk about things. I mean, if they give us everything in an hour, we can talk about it in the next hour. But worst case, we spend 2 hours getting a lot of good input from developers and housing folks about what we could be looking at in the zoning. I don't have my calendar in front of me. That would be probably April or May. Oh, we're in April.
April 28th.
April 28th. So that would mean in May 12th, approximately, we would have another one where we would do a debrief where we would talk about, all right, what are the changes? What are the buckets? What goes in the fast bucket? What goes in the slow bucket?
Could you have a matrix where you have your staff recommendations, both substantively and then also fast or slow, and then we could get like we just got through all those public. We got through a lot of material the last meeting. Like if you guys could do that in the 2 weeks between, then we can find out what those fast bucket things are, and we can just get them, whatever that process is, to get them to city council quicker. I just, when you hear people are like, it's costing people money, and these are people we want to be successful. We want them building these homes. Like, let's hear that feedback and try to act as quickly as we can.
Yep. So the process at that point would be, so now what are we talking, like May 12th? So that would shift to you guys make a recommendation to city council, because there's not a planning commission process at that point. It would go to city council. I'd have to go through all the details that are in there, but it's a relatively quick process. It's on a council agenda, so if we're in the middle of May, I would say by the middle of June, an emergency amendment could be in place. I think that would be relatively
Could we move
A
that?
reasonable fast track would put that in there. So by the end of the fiscal year, and again, the council would have their meeting, how many questions, how much input do they want? Do they make their decision that night, or do they postpone it? There's things that get out of our control,
Yeah.
but
You've got to notify the surrounding towns, and it would be a good precursor to the regional plan review. It would start to get the surrounding towns involved in some of the implications of this. I just sent that statutory section to Leah, she can pass it around if they go.
I'm sorry, I have to leave because I thought my daughter was getting picked up, but clearly she's not getting picked up. So
I
Can I-
think I've got some marching orders to try
Okay.
to set that up. I'll work with Evelyn, see if we can, there are a number of people who are in touch with us on a regular basis. So I think I can name off Nathan Suter and James Moore, and there are a number of them that attended the meeting that we can just reach back out to and say, hey, we're interested in getting more of the nuts and bolts, less of the general stuff, more of the specific stuff of where the hangups are. Tim Heaney.
I think there's a lot of energy and momentum that's happening right now. I think that this suggestion is a really good one, and we should follow it forward.
So if that's good marching orders, I move we adjourn.
Okay.
Thank
Does anyone want to second that?
I'll second that.
Okay, great. Thank you.